Oh boy, we have got a big one for you guys today. Steven Universe is one of the most popular Cartoon Network shows of all time. It's got 5 seasons, a spin-off show, a movie, and a whole lot of lore to cover. So please, sit down, strap in, and grab a pork chop as we cover the entirety of Steven Universe from start to end. Let's go!
We are the Crystal Gems.
The show takes place in Beach City, a beautiful coastal town in the US, and stars Steven, an energetic and charming kid who's got a gem in his belly button. He lives with his mentors and friends, the Crystal Gems, a group of heroes dedicating to protecting the Earth with their magic powers. The Crystal Gems are made up of the team of Garnet, the kinda quiet but very hard-hitting bruiser of the team, Amethyst, the totally lax gem equipped with a whip, and Pearl, the graceful and accountable staff wielder. There's a lot more to them than that, and there's a lot more characters to cover as well. But for now, that's our main cast of characters. And so, with that out of the way, let's get right into our first episode. Our first episode starts with Steven in The Big Donut, which in case you're wondering, is a donut store, and briefly introduces us to the employees of the store as well, that being Lars and Sadie. Lars is a bit grouchy, and Sadie is pretty sweet, letting a disheartened Steven take home a freezer that once held his favorite ice cream that's now discontinued. Rest in peace, Cookie Cat. Steven gets back to the Gems' home base to find a bunch of centipedals attacking. But luckily, the Gems seem to have things under control. Steven wants to help, but since he hasn't managed to control his Gems' power yet, Pearl says he should leave it to them for now, which kinda disappoints Steven. However, he's quickly lifted up again when he finds a whole stash of Cookie Cat ice cream bars in his fridge, which the Gems got for him when they heard it was discontinued.
We went out and stole a bunch.
I went back and paid for them.
Steven is so elated by the ice cream when he takes a bite that his gem actually glows for a brief moment, meaning he has a chance to summon his own weapon. Sadly, he doesn't do so in time, and so decides he wants help to learn how to do so. Pearl tells him to try really hard. Amethyst says don't try at all, and Garnet says to do both, or channel every element in the universe. As you can imagine, Steven still doesn't know what to do. He tries to replicate the moment that caused his glow initially, and when he bites into the Cookie Cat again, he summons a shield that subsequently wrecks a TV. Still got a bit of learning to do. The centipedals return alongside their queen, and just as things seem hopeless for the rest of the Gems, Steven, who still can't summon his shield even after eating the ice cream, uses some quick thinking, chucking the Cookie Cat freezer at the monster. The shock from the freezer leaves the centipedal mother vulnerable, and the Gems destroy it and collect its gem, bubbling it. Solid first episode right there.
I'll always remember the time we spent together.
In the second episode of the series, there's a giant bright eyeball-looking thing in the sky, and the Gems have got to find a cannon to destroy it that belonged to Steven's mom, Rose Quartz. You'll hear a lot more about her as time progresses. Figuring his dad might know where his mom put it, Steven goes over to his dad's car wash to find him, where he's sleeping in his van, which he lives in. Alright. Mr. Universe, or Greg, takes him over to a shed that he stores his stuff in, and Steven starts digging. Greg talks about how Rose Quartz gave up her physical form to bring Steven into the world, and we even see a picture of the two together, until Steven finds the cannon. Also, Greg says that the iconic pork chop hot dog line for the first time.
It's okay, buddy. If every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs.
That's a staple right there. As the red eye thing is getting bigger, Steven and his dad arrive, but nobody actually knows how to use the cannon, and only figure it out when Steven says the pork chop line one more time, powering the cannon and shooting a beam out that kinda looks like Rose Quartz. Beach City is mostly saved. In the episode Frybo, Pearl loses a fragment of some crystal that can bring any piece of clothing to life. Steven finds it controlling his pants and decides he has to find Pearl and bring it to her. But before he does, he runs into the Fryman family, who own a French fry store. Petey is the one who wears the Frybo costume, the mascot for the French fry shop, and he's not much of a fan. Steven puts the crystal in the suit, giving the Frybo suit life and making Petey's dad happy. All seems like it's going well, right? Well, the suit becomes a monster that gave me and probably a bunch of other kids nightmares for a while. Yeesh, that thing is scary. Pearl finds Steven, but is instantly blinded by Frybo's ketchup blood, meaning Steven has to save the day on his own. He uses the rest of Pearl's crystals on his clothes and orders them to attack Frybo, eventually even launching his underwear.
You leave me no choice!
At least Pearl was blinded, I guess.
Pearl, I think our work here is done.
Put your clothes on, Steven.
In the episode Bubble Buddies, kinda like SpongeBob, Steven works up the courage to talk to his crush, Connie. And ends up saving her by encasing her in a bubble with himself. The only problem is he can't get them out of the bubble. Steven can't reach the gems. Lars and Sadie can't break the thing with a hammer.
He makes weird faces.
And Steven's friend Onion, who also fully debuts in this episode, can't even burst the bubble with a harpoon gun. Eventually, they're launched into the bottom of the ocean and find a worm monster with a gem that knocks them even deeper. Steven and Connie decide to be friends, with Steven even returning a bracelet he saw Connie lose at a parade a year before. Steven manages to beat the worm by tying it up, and all ends well. This one is just super sweet. I'm a fan. In the next episode, Steven is brought on his first serious mission to an old gem battlefield. But when he touches something he shouldn't, Steven and the rest of the crystal gems are trapped in an ancient gem temple maze. The gang keeps ending up back where they started.
Oh, we're on a magic treasure hunt for some magic treasure.
But eventually, Steven figures out that they've got to go down and freeze them thanks to some sort of explosion. Just remember that battlefield detail. Trust me.
The temple explodes!
In the next episode, we've got our obligatory wrestling story in a cartoon. This time starring Amethyst. Turns out, she sometimes goes off at night to become the Purple Puma, the biggest bad guy in Beach City's underground wrestling.
Let's introduce his opponent, or should I say, victim.
Steven sees Amethyst's ability to shapeshift when she leaves, and says he wants to join her, so he becomes Tiger Millionaire to help her go after the Tag Team Championship.
Tiger Millionaire!
Oh, and remember that guy with the Loch Ness Monster hat? He seems minor, but trust me, you'll be glad he got beaten so quickly by the time this video is over. Through the power of cheating, the two get through all of the tag teams they need to in order to challenge the champions. Eventually, though, Steven feels bad when he knocks a cup out of Lars's hand, who basically is his only fan. On the night of the championship fight, though, Garnet and Pearl find out about what Steven and Garnet have been doing and tell them to stop, causing a fight between the two teams. Eventually, Steven gets through to Pearl and Garnet, and the two decide to play to the crowd as the new bad guys, saying they want to destroy all of wrestling.
We are the notorious Order of Wrestling Haters.
The crowd starts to love Puma and Tiger, and the two win the belts. Also, for any of you actual wrestling fans out there, there's a super deep cut reference when Steven holds a racket to a real-life wrestling manager named Jim Cornette, who, you guessed it, famously carried a tennis racket to the ring to smack wrestlers. Really weird reference, but I'm all for it. Alright, back to lore episodes. Episode 10, Steven's Lion, has Steven meet a pink lion who's super friendly towards him and everyone else, even if the gems aren't super trusting at first. The lion follows Steven home, but seems to be a bit mad at Steven, ditching him at a pizza place.
He's pink!
Pink? How can he be invisible and pink?
And also scratching up the door at the house. Thankfully, though, the two get back on the same page after the lion saves Steven's life, and the gems decide to keep it too. In the episode Giant Woman, we finally learn about gem fusion, where two crystal gems can fuse into one being. Pearl and Amethyst make the gem named Opal, but they're not willing to cooperate. Garnet has the group go off to find a heaven beetle, but no matter how much Steven asks, Pearl and Amethyst refuse to make Opal.
Do you turn into a giant woman? Or just a regular-sized giant woman?
Saying they only do it for deadly situations. When a giant bird puts them in a deadly situation, the two try to fuse but fail due to a lack of teamwork. And eventually, Steven gets eaten. Luckily though, he and his goat friend find the heaven beetle inside the stomach of the bird. He's broken out of the bird by Opal, who uses Amethyst's whip and Pearl's staff to make a bow that takes out the rest of the smaller birds.
Do you know who I am?
Garnet also mentions at the end of the episode that Steven can fuse too. Looking forward to seeing that, honestly, because Opal was legitimately really cool. In the episode Steven the Sword Fighter, Pearl teaches Steven proper sword fighting technique by fighting a hologram version of herself. Thanks to a Steven distraction though, Pearl is defeated.
Whoopsie daisy! Steven, it's okay. I'm gonna be just...
And poofs away into a small gem. But according to Garnet, this is normal. and is a healing process for crystal gems. 2 weeks later though, and Pearl is still just a gem. Steven, who's missing Pearl and also wants the house cleaned, decides to try and work with Hollow Pearl to see if she'll clean, but in reality, she's just a sparring hologram. Also, small detail. The action figure Robo Pearl stabs is of Cloud Strife from the video game Final Fantasy VII. These small details are really fun. Hollow Pearl goes nuts eventually and tries to actually hurt Steven, but thanks to quick thinking, he beats her and she phases away. And right after, actual Pearl finally regenerates.
Pearl's back!
Steven, what are you doing?
Pearl's back! Pearl's back!
In the next episode, Connie is showing Steven an absolutely ridiculous movie trailer. And so the two decide to go to see it in the theaters.
Needs to go see movies when you got magic!
Transportation is an issue though, so Steven figures they'll take Lion to get there. Lion, who's not really trained well, takes Steven and Connie across the water and through a portal to a magic gem place, where Steven gets his hand stuck to a podium. The two figure out each part of Steven opens up different parts of an armory, and eventually accidentally unleash a robot of some kind that attacks them. Lion takes them to the theater to escape, but the robot follows them. And so Lion gives Steven a sword that was lodged in his head to take the robot down. Don't ask questions. Oh, and they see their movie, Dogcopter.
2 kids and 1 lion to see Dogcopter.
In the episode Rose's Room, Steven wishes for a place all to himself, causing his gem to unlock a door to what used to be his mother's room. While he can summon anything he wants in the room,
A tiny floating whale?
he can't eat the food he summons, and so he leaves to go grab a donut. However, things are off at the donut shop, as Lars and Sadie aren't like their usual selves. Onion is a little weird too, and even Frybo shows up and casually gives Steven fry bits. Weird. Connie seems weird too, alongside literally everyone else Steven knows.
He was incredible! He was incredible!
Causing him to run off and find his dad, who seems pretty normal, until his advice gets weird. Steven figures out he's still in the room. The world's star is disappearing, and eventually a whale he summoned earlier on sends him back to the real world.
Ow.
You're not clouds!
All right, Steven!
Now that was a trippy episode. In the episode Monster Buddies, after beating another creature and bubbling its gem, things get a bit risky for Steven. And so Garnet bubbles him away too, much to Pearl's chagrin. Steven finds all the previous bubbled monster gems as well, and accidentally frees the centipedal from the first episode. But for some reason, this time she's really small. Also, doesn't the form it takes right when it's freed kinda look human for a sec? Weird. Anywho, it just seems docile and confused, and gently walks up to Steven, right as the other crystal gems show up and want to put it back in gem form. Luckily, Garnet is convinced by Steven to let him train it. Steven feeds the centipedal chips, and when a bird attacks Steven for the chips, the centipedal saves Steven.
No! Mi torta!
Garnet decides to use the centipedal's acid spit to help out in a mission, and it works great, leading the crystal gems right to a shooting star. However, when Garnet whips her gloves out, the centipedal starts freaking out and causes a cave-in. The gems fight the centipedal, but thanks to Steven hugging it, the monster becomes friendly once more, only for it to die, saving Steven from falling debris. Garnet tells Steven his mother used to try and save the monsters too, but she never found a way, but says maybe Steven will. Steven then bubbles the gem himself for the first time, and sends it back to where it was before with a bag of chips. Aw. In the next episode, we see Amethyst fall off of a cliff and crack her gem.
I'm not gonna fall. Oh! Ugh, this is so embarrassing.
Causing her to get a wonky googly eye. Supposedly, when this happened before, Rose Quartz would use her healing tears to fix it, but now Steven is the only one who can help, thanks to him having his mother's gem. Steven tries and fails to heal Amethyst, and so they decide to head to Rose's garden to see what they can do. A fountain of healing tears that they have as a backup is covered by overgrown thorn bushes.
It's going to be okay, Garnet.
Sure.
You really think so?
And Amethyst saves Steven from one of them pricking him, only to crack her gem even more. They find the fountain, but unfortunately, it ain't flowing. Steven finally cries when he thinks about how he never got to meet his mom, but it still doesn't heal Amethyst. But luckily, the fountain starts up and brings her right back to normal. Steven's been telling this story to Connie the whole time as they share a juice box. And as Steven vents about how he worries he'll never be like his mom, Connie's eyesight is healed, causing her glasses to give her a headache. Turns out it's Steven's spit that heals people, not his tears. In the next episode, we learn Steven never went to school after Connie tells him about it, and so Pearl does her best to replicate it for him. She brings out a mirror that can tell him all of gem history, but it won't work, and so she just gives up. So I guess Steven's out for summer. He runs across Lars and Sadie, then almost gets hit by the Beach City mayor, but the mirror alerts him using a memory of Lars talking from earlier. Steven goes off to make fun of the mayor during his speech, and the mirror helps him do so as well. The mirror then starts to have full conversations with Steven using memories, and says it wants to be friends.
Steven is the new friend. Really? Yeah!
Steven brings it home to show the gems, but they're extremely worried when he tells them it talks to him, and want to bubble it away. Steven stops Amethyst right before she can do anything though, smacking her glasses off and revealing her third eye. Big mistake. Steven is told by the mirror to break it free by removing the gem from the back, while a weird water pattern forms underneath him. Steven frees the gem, and it turns into another full-blown gem, named Lapis Lazuli, who is mad at the other gems for keeping her in the mirror.
I'm Lapis Lazuli, and you can't keep me trapped here anymore!
After asking if he wants to come with her, Lapis Lazuli tells Steven to not trust the other gems, and walks away with the ocean crashing behind her. Dang. After the events of the last episode, the episode Ocean Gem shows that Ocean City has lost a bit of its namesake, that being the ocean. And so Steven, the gems, his dad, Connie, and Lion decide to go off and try to fix the problem. On the way there, Pearl tells Steven that all the monsters they fight used to be just like them, but got corrupted, and so subduing them with the bubbles is the best they can do to help them for now. They find Lapis, and the rest of the ocean, and have to fight watery versions of themselves. Also, look, Amethyst brought back Purple Puma. When his dad gets hurt, Steven says he doesn't want to fight, and even summons his shield on purpose for the first time, stopping the water clones. Steven goes up to Lapis to talk, and she says the crystal gems are different from her because all they care about are Earth, not other gems. Lapis wants to go to her home planet, but her gem is cracked. So Steven heals her, and she flies off into space. The other crystal gems don't actually know what this means for them, meaning they've just gotta wait and see. What an eventful set of episodes. Alright, now we've got something a little lighter. The episode Watermelon Steven. After having a spinning watermelon seed spit that covers the car wash, Steven beats his dad in a seed spitting competition and gets a watermelon crown. You know, normal, everyday stuff. Steven falls asleep and wakes up to find a bunch of watermelon Stevens growing everywhere, with the crystal gems saying apparently this is sort of similar to something his mom used to do. Steven goes to the boardwalk to give away the human-shaped melons, but eventually Ronaldo, the guy from the wrestling episode who was wearing that Loch Ness Monster hat, basically gets him to start selling them to the whole town. Onion also shows up and takes Baby Melon,
Onion!
who wasn't for sale, but it ends up coming to life and running to Steven. Steven goes off to get the other melon Stevens that were sold, but Ronaldo won't give up his as he wants to film an autopsy of it for his YouTube channel.
It's alive! Not for long.
The melons proceed to beat him up. With the melons becoming dangerous, the gems try to fight them, but the numbers game is too much.
No!
Baby Melon sacrifices himself to get them to stop, and so Steven tells them to go away and think about what they've done. They all spread out in different directions, and Steven takes a bite from the remains of Baby Melon. I can't tell if I should find that sad or gross. Next up, we've got another lion episode. And again, Steven wants to know more about his mom. Steven falls asleep and wakes up in Lion's mane, and Pearl has to rescue him.
Lion! Let him go!
But even still, Lion really insists on Steven being in his mane. Also, that's just straight up Nintendo GameCube on the floor there. The showrunners must love video games, huh? When Steven falls back asleep, he dreams of playing checkers with Dogcopter. Hey, remember him? Until once again, he wakes up in a weird place inside Lion's mane, and again, he can't breathe. After sending him outside, Steven feels bad for Lion and hugs him, looking again into his mane and realizing there's an entire landscape inside.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
He finds a VHS tape by a tree with a bunch of weirdly personal belongings and takes it out of the mane. And then brings it to the donut shop to play it. On the tape is video of Steven's dad introducing himself to the not yet born Steven, followed by his mom doing the same thing. She speaks to Steven directly, saying she makes up half of him, and that even though she'll be gone, she'll always love him.
Every moment you love being yourself. That's me, loving you.
She also talks about how beautiful Earth is and tells Steven to protect it.
Take care of them, Steven.
With the video cutting right before she kisses Mr. Universe. That one hits me right in the feels. The next episode, Warp Tour. Steven sees what goes on outside of the gem's teleportation stream and notices something warping. Although the other gems pass it off as allergies obscuring Steven's vision. Steven is super worried still though.
Ah! Amethyst!
And so the crystal gems go around looking for anything odd, even going to a location where they can warp to other planets. Sure enough, all of those pads are broken, and nobody can use them. Even still, Steven is fed up that the gems don't believe him and can't sleep out of fear. Eventually, something crashes from space.
You were the thing in the warp stream!
And through the roof and has a scuffle with Steven, dinging the warp pad in the process. Although the creature fixes the pad. Interesting. The green thing uses the pad with Steven clinging to him, and he sees that there's a bunch of them that are now all using the warps. Right as he's about to freeze, Garnet saves Steven, and the other crystal gems apologize for not believing him. They head back to the planetary warp pad and see that a bunch of creatures fix it, summoning yet another new gem, this time being Peridot. The crystal gems have no clue who she is, but she doesn't seem friendly at all, as she eventually flees when she sees a sticker on the portal that Steven left, destroying her green creature things as she ditches the place. The gems fear what's coming for them, and so Garnet breaks the portal once more to make sure Peridot doesn't come back. Things are getting a little worrisome for the crystal gems, huh? I would not want to be in their shoes. The next episode, Alone Together, starts with Steven trying to learn how to do fusion dances, but isn't quite there yet. Apparently, it's hard for everyone but Garnet. Good to note. Steven tells Connie he's worried he can't fuse at all, considering he's half human. But due to the two dancing together on the beach, Steven and Connie actually fuse together. That's weird, and also impressive. Steven shows the other gems his fusion, with Pearl being really concerned and Garnet being overjoyed, telling Stevani that they should go have fun, like Connie and Steven's name together. Steven and Connie get a little weirded out when they can't each eat a donut and instead share two with the same mouth, but are invited to a rave before they can think more heavily about it. The people at the rave are just straight up in awe with Stevani, by the way. Stevani gets insecure, but a guy named Kevin tries to put the moves on them, and they're just really weirded out by it. So they head over to a corner to talk to themselves, with Connie not being comfortable dancing unless she's actually next to Steven, not fused with him. Kevin tries to bring Stevani back to the floor, and they go, but purposefully dance as awfully as possible.
And it's Stevani. I am not your baby.
Causing the two to split back into their normal selves, and they manically laugh in glee. I don't think I'd ever want to fuse with anyone. In the episode Future Vision, Garnet tells Steven that she has, well, future vision. This means she can see possible outcomes to most situations, which makes Steven extra curious, asking her a bunch of questions as they walk to the big donut. Garnet explains again that she can't exactly see the future, but can only see trajectories of it. While buying fry bits, Steven asks what bad outcomes could he experience at that moment, and Garnet just lists every possible terrible way to die you could imagine. So yeah, Steven gets a bit worried.
Steven!
Nice helmet.
Garnet leaves to go on a mission with the other gems, causing Steven to panic and ask for his future again, to which Garnet says things will be fine as long as he doesn't go on the roof. So of course Steven goes on the roof to try and conquer his fear of the future. causing Garnet to freak out when she gets back. She tells Steven she figured he'd act like this, but wanted to take the chance on telling him about her future vision so she could get closer to him, and then says that only he can control his future, not her. Steven gets off the roof, and the two calm down and hug. Yeah, I don't know how Garnet would stay calm with that ability, honestly. I'd always be so panicky. In a later episode, one of Peridot's marble robots comes back to Earth.
Don't you dare get that stuff on me! Goofag! Come here!
Causing the gems to start once again worrying about what could be up with her. The gems get tired of fighting the marble robots so frequently.
Stop coming here, you stupid ball!
And so eventually decide to follow one and see what exactly it does. It uses a portal to go to kindergarten, a place where gems used to incubate in ancient times, and digs down to some weird techie-filled hideout and eventually calls Peridot. The gems suspected to be trying to bring the kindergarten back online, which would destroy all life on Earth, but Steven tries to just go up and talk to her.
There appears to be an infestation of Stevens.
To which she promptly tries to squish him. The gems save Steven, but alert Peridot inadvertently that there are indeed gems on Earth, so she ends the call to report this. Things are getting interesting here. In the next episode, the gems go to an old battlefield to pick up some weapons they can use for future fights, with Steven and Lion finding his mother's scabbard for a sword.
Oh, gimme! Gimme! Shoo! Shoo!
I feel like now is a good time to talk about how ecstatic Pearl gets anytime Rose is brought up. She gets really excited.
Sometimes you look so much like her.
Really? You mean Pearl?
When the other gems go off to put their weaponry away, Pearl takes Steven to find the sword that the scabbard held, that apparently Rose kept hidden in a place that she hid all of her precious belongings. Pearl only knew about it because she was her closest confidant. Pearl takes Steven to the armory Lion took him to a while back that was controlled by Steven's body, but the sword isn't there. Also, yeah, Pearl is baffled Lion took Steven there before her. She shows Steven what the sword looks like, and it's the one he pulled right from Lion's head in that same previous Lion episode. And so he pulls it from Lion's mane where he stores it now.
But how?
Pearl gets sad that it seems like Rose kept secrets from even her, and lashes out at everyone, running away when she almost ruins a painting of her old friend. Steven goes after Pearl, who explains just how much Rose meant to her, being her best friend for nearly 5,000 years. Pearl wonders if Rose can still see her through Steven's eyes, and states how she knows she'd be so disappointed in her. But Steven says that he thinks she's pretty great, and the two spend the rest of the night together, reminiscing on old memories while making new ones. This episode is just so lovely. It's probably my favorite one so far. If you haven't seen this one, you really should. It's fantastic. In the episode Story for Steven, Steven finds a picture of his dad with his old band manager, prompting Mr. Universe to tell the story of how he met Rose Quartz way back when. So Greg used to be a local rock star named Mr. Universe, but at one of his first concerts, Rose Quartz was the only one to show up.
My manager Marty can hook you up with CDs and t-shirts. Oh wait, he's not there.
Greg gave her a free CD and was about to give her a t-shirt as well, but she vanished before he could. And to make matters worse, his manager Marty wasn't a fan of him giving stuff away.
You can't give stuff away for free. What about my 75%?
He goes off to look for Rose and finds a purple owl who starts talking to him, sounding a lot like Amethyst.
You haven't seen anyone like that around, have you?
Sure have, pal.
She flies off and talks to a young Pearl, with Mr. Universe eventually popping up again. Pearl, a now human Amethyst, and Garnet are all about to toss him back over the fence before Rose stops them. Greg even gives her the t-shirt. That's sweet. Mr. Universe heads back to his van and Marty, but tells him he wants to stay with Rose instead of continue his tour, which leads to a dangerous on-road argument. Ultimately though, Greg kicks his manager out of the van and rushes back to the beachside residence of the Gems. He plays a song outside of Rose's door with her eventually walking out, telling him she doesn't want to have him waste his small lifespan and give up on everything he wants for something like her. Greg says that she's everything he wants though, and the rest is history. Marty is the worst.
I can sing. What?
Time for some season closers. The episode The Return has a green hand ship show up in the sky, which is presumably Peridot's. The gang fires the light cannons from Rose's armory at it.
If every pork chop were perfect,
we wouldn't have hot dogs.
But the shots do nothing. Stephen is told by Garnet that his job during this crisis is to keep the panicking townsfolk safe and calm, while the others go off and try to stop Peridot. And amazingly, Stephen understands. That is some development right there. On the ride to the city, Greg explains to Stephen that the gems are actually aliens who invaded Earth thousands of years ago, and most of them weren't friendly. Rose saw that they were destroying the Earth and turned on her own kind, driving them off the Earth with a boatload of battles that killed tons of humans and gems alike, and was only able to persevere thanks to her shield. Wow. Stephen realizes he needs to return to the gems so they can use his shield, and convinces his dad to let him head back on Lion. He shows up to see that even with Amethyst and Pearl fused to make Opal, nothing is stopping the giant green hand. The hand lands, opens up, and reveals Peridot in another new gem named Jasper, with Lapis being dragged along as well. Oh, and apparently, Jasper is looking for Rose. Eep. Jasper tells Peridot to blast them with the ship, but Stephen blocks it with his shield, which Jasper immediately recognizes as Rose's. She says she'll have to report this to someone named Yellow Diamond.
Yellow Diamond needs to see this thing.
Before she blasts Garnet into dust, turning her into 2 gems. Jasper knocks out Stephen and the episode ends. The second half of the season finale, Jailbreak, starts with Stephen waking up in a jail cell and easily breaking out. He finds a sad, lonely red gem in a cell who isn't as lucky with getting out.
It's okay?
But Stephen helps her, and the two go to look for the red gem's friend named Sapphire. Stephen finds Lapis locked up, but she refuses to help, so Stephen just promises he'll come back for her. Stephen overhears Peridot and Jasper talking about the cluster, then finds Sapphire and frees her. She reunites with the red gem named Ruby. Sapphire kisses Ruby on the forehead. The two dance, and Garnet is formed, who, has been a fusion all along. That explains a lot, huh?
Did I make a good first impression?
Oh, Stephen, we already love you.
Garnet kisses Stephen on the forehead, giving him future vision, and he heads off to find the other gems. Stephen finds Amethyst and Pearl, and the three find Peridot and take her down, all while Garnet fights Jasper while singing. Garnet tosses Jasper into what I think is the power source of the space hand, causing the ship to crash. Peridot escapes. Lapis is lost in the crash, and Jasper breaks out of the rubble back on Earth. Uh-oh. Lapis actually crawls out from under the rubble too.
Come here, brat! Aw, don't fly off so soon.
And Jasper convinces her to fuse with her by bringing up how the crystal gems kept her trapped in the mirror for so long. They become this giant green monster fusion, but before it can do anything, Lapis chains herself and Jasper up with water shackles and drags her into the ocean, telling Jasper she's tired of being everyone's prisoner. And that is the end of Season 1. Wow. We're jumping to the episode Sworn to the Sword next. In this episode, Stephen convinces Pearl to teach Connie to sword fight, who takes the two to a sky arena to train. Hollow Pearl is summoned, and a nice training montage begins, with Pearl even showing herself fighting for Rose Quartz back in the day, emphasizing that she needs to dedicate her fighting to a cause. Turns out Connie's cause is Stephen, which weirds him out a little, especially when Garnet tells Stephen that Pearl's fighting habits put her passion for Rose above logic and safety. While Pearl can come back after getting smushed, Connie can't. So yeah, Stephen heads off to warn Connie, obviously. He catches Pearl saying some concerning stuff to Connie, but Stephen convinces Connie that instead of fighting for him, she should be fighting alongside him. Pearl gets mad and eventually snaps, calling Stephen Rose by accident.
I mean...
She comes to and realizes that Stephen's dedication and passion is just as strong as Connie's, and so decides to train them both together. Again, Pearl really loved Rose. In the episode We Need to Talk, Mr. Universe finds out Stephen and Connie confuse, but tells Connie, who's worried her parents will find out, that he understands, and begins telling a story. Mr. Universe shows a tape he filmed of he and the gems playing music, but Pearl, who's a little jealous of Mr. Universe, gets Rose to fuse with her mid-song, making Rainbow Quartz. Pearl tells Mr. Universe that he's just a phase for Rose, saying that she's just very into humans and that he's nothing but a novelty. She even says Rose's feelings for him will never be as strong as they will be for her because he's not a gem, meaning he can't fuse, which is the ultimate act of connection. Mr. Universe then quickly decides he'll be the first human to try and fuse with a gem. Garnet tells him that he'll have to dance like himself and not like Pearl if he wants a shot at fusing.
That's fusion.
I think I get it.
And so he tries, just that when Rose returns, but it doesn't work. Rose continues to treat him ultra sweetly and call him cute.
I love humans. You're all so funny.
But Mr. Universe starts crying and questioning how what they have will work with him being so different. For the first time, the two have an actual conversation where Rose says she doesn't miss her home planet at all, says she has loved other humans, and the two realize they're fully in love. Another feely episode. Gotta love them. In the episode Cry for Help, a message from a stranded Peridot to her home planet is picked up off of Steven's TV, with her trying to contact Yellow Diamond. The gems find where Peridot is broadcasting, and Garnet and Pearl fuse to make Sardonyx, who's an energetic, magician-y theater person type with a giant hammer. Amethyst is a little annoyed too.
Aren't you the sweetest little charmer? I could literally squish you right now.
Sardonyx turns the tower off, and Pearl and Garnet celebrate, as they haven't fused together in a long time. The signal comes back. The two fuse again and take out the tower. But Amethyst is still downtrodden, sad that Garnet would rather fuse with Pearl than her. Steven decides to go with Amethyst to the tower once more, and wait for Peridot to set things up again so she can stop her herself, and show Garnet how awesome she is. But to their surprise, it's Pearl who's restoring the tower.
It's Peridot. She must have fixed the communication hub again.
Pearl gets everyone to go back and fix it, to which Steven has her confess to Garnet, who then refuses to fuse with her, and instead make Sugulite with Amethyst, destroying the whole tower once and for all. The episode ends with tensions high between the gems. No status quo anymore. In the episode Sadie's Song, Steven catches Sadie singing and convinces her to sign up for the Beachapalooza. Sadie's mom finds out and is super excited, trying to help her find an outfit where it's made clear that she goes a little overboard in terms of loving her daughter.
I just had to rush home to show you this. Look at this little guy I got for you.
Steven goes along with Sadie's mom's super showy ideas, while Sadie just wants to keep things simple and focus on the music. But they won't listen to her. Sadie looks pretty ridiculous with all the enhancements Steven and her mom made, and when she sees the crowd, she panics and washes all the makeup off, and tells Steven he's just as bad as her mom. She tells her mom she's tired of taking over everything in her life, with her wanting to do things her way. Steven goes up on stage for her, and the episode ends with Sadie singing the song Her Way, alone with Steven. That one's gotta be relatable to a lot of people. In the next episode, Peridot actually full-on returns and kidnaps Steven, wanting to get off the planet. Steven tries to use his healing spit on the homeworld warp pad, but it doesn't work. She's about to tell Steven something ominous when the other gems show up and take down Peridot, bubbling her gem and sending it off to boot. Well, that was easy. Worried about what she was about to say, Steven frees Peridot, who even without her boots and hands and junk, starts slapping Steven around.
Oh, yes! Feel my unbridled rage!
Eventually, she calms down and explains she was about to talk about the cluster, which could shatter all gems. Steven asks more about the cluster, but Peridot escapes and flees to the bathroom. Peridot stays locked in the bathroom overnight.
If you're trying to flush yourself down the toilet, it won't work.
With the gems agreeing they should probably see if she does eventually say something about this cluster thing, Steven offers Peridot her boot in return for coming into the bathroom, and the two actually kinda have a halfway normal conversation. Honestly, Peridot just seems like a lost puppy at this point. I almost feel bad for her. The next episode shows Peridot has still locked herself in the bathroom and still won't say anything about the cluster unless they give her back her armor, which they tossed in the ocean. Whoops. The gems decide to go look around for this cluster themselves and leave Steven with Peridot, and I just really like this scene.
I love you. Bye.
See you later!
Peridot runs out of the bathroom when she hears thunder, thinking it's the end of the world, but Steven explains it's just a storm and shows her there's nothing to worry about, with her eventually even stepping into the rain. In return for helping her conquer her fear of rain, Peridot says she'll tell Steven about the cluster, but needs to go to the kindergarten to do it, and Steven agrees, as long as she holds his hand the whole time. On the way, Peridot explains that when the gems, the bad ones, not the crystal gems, found the Earth wasn't suitable colony for them, they decided to turn it into a gem geo-weapon, which Peridot reads tons of reports on. Together, they get an old machine running they used to do artificial fusion. The gem's main goal was to make one giant artificial fusion made of a bunch of different gems, known as the cluster. It's currently forming underneath the Earth's core, and when it fully forms, it'll destroy the entire planet. Apparently, some of the prototypes of the small gems are already showing up, so who knows how long until the cluster is done. And the only way to stop it, according to Peridot, is Steven. Of course. Some gem mutants show up to attack Steven and Peridot.
Let's run into this corner! Oh no! We're cornered!
But luckily, the crystal gems save their lives. And so, Peridot finally tells the other gems about the cluster. Whew, that's a whole lot of lore there, folks. In the next episode, Back to the Barn, we see Peridot explain the cluster to the gems with both Pearl and herself saying they need to build a machine to get to the Earth's core.
There's a remote chance something useful could be inside this primitive image cube.
They head over to a barn to get materials, but Peridot starts treating Pearl really poorly. She explains to Steven that pearls, yeah, apparently there's a ton of pearls out there, are made to order servants who stand around and look pretty. Yeah, that's not good. The two argue who would build a better drill ship, so Steven convinces the two to have a robot building competition. He's still a kid. The two hop to it and make their robots, and finish quickly too. Steven hosts a Robo-Olympics competition, but the two tie, meaning they've got to lead the drill project together. So yeah, that goes over about as well as you'd expect, with the two instantly fighting and having a robot battle. Pearl loses.
Uh-oh.
But impresses Peridot with her fighting and technical skills, and so, the two decide to work together. I guess some people just need to bleed together before they work together? I don't know. In the episode, The Answer, Garnet finally tells Steven how Ruby and Sapphire, the two gems who she's a fusion of, first met 5,750 years ago while the gems were colonizing. A group of rebel gems began to fight back, and so a diplomatic group of colonizer gems were sent down to investigate, with Sapphire being one of them, a blue gem who could see into the future. Also, she was protected by an entourage of red gems, rubies. So yeah, Sapphire was called to Earth by Blue Diamond, who needed her future-seeing abilities to aid her. And she predicted the rebellion would end here, with Sapphire herself being a casualty. The crystal gems, Rose and Pearl, showed up to stop them, and things were all turning out like Sapphire's prediction, until the last remaining ruby saved her from Pearl and fused with her. The court was disgusted by the fusion between two different gems.
Unbelievable. Disgusting. This is unheard of.
And were about to execute Ruby before the two ran off. They went off into the wilderness and eventually fused once more, stumbling across Pearl and Rose.
Welcome to Earth.
They treated her with kindness and take her in. But the fusion asked why Ruby could alter fate and why Sapphire gave up everything. The answer is love. Well, I suppose that makes sense. A later episode, It Could Have Been Great. The gang finishes the drill, but still needs coordinates to get to Cluster, and so go to the moon to get them. They arrive in a weird moon base.
Hey, look over here! I think it's a door!
Steven finds a figure on the wall that's apparently Blue Diamond, and Peridot goes off to find one of Yellow Diamond. Apparently, the diamonds are the rulers of the gem world and all other colonies. They walk up to the top, past a weird, ominous orb thing. Don't know if that matters yet, but I guess we'll find out, and then get to a computer where they find the coordinates. Of course, it's next to Florida. Kidding, of course.
Does this thing have any games on it? No. This wasn't used for games.
Peridot then shows everyone what a finished colony would have looked like on Earth, saying it could have been great, which gets the gems angry. Peridot says Rose Quartz's goal to preserve life on Earth was worthless, considering that even without the colony, the Earth is still in danger.
Oh, is there anything that's worth more than...
Causing Garnet to trash the computer and storm off. They all start to leave, but Steven notices Peridot has something in her hand as she's leaving, and the episode ends. The next episode begins with Steven talking to Peridot, who says the diamonds are objectively perfect gems, and that it should never be in question why she's loyal to them. Steven tricks Peridot, and takes what she said to be a communicator to the diamonds from her, locking her in a car.
Now they want to blow it up with the cluster!
Yes! That's the point!
Peridot breaks out using her robot and takes the communicator, but Amethyst turns into a helicopter and a chase begins. Peridot ends up activating the communicator and we get our first glimpse of Yellow Diamond. Very intimidating, I'm not gonna lie. Peridot tells Yellow Diamond her ship crashed and doesn't mention the gems. But says the cluster should still be under the Earth. However, she also says she thinks the Earth shouldn't be destroyed, as it has unique resources. But Yellow Diamond doesn't want to hear it. Peridot tells her she's a clod in anger, and hangs up.
What do you know about the Earth?
Apparently more than you clod!
And the gems swarm her in happiness. She's officially a crystal gem. Season finale time. Peridot is losing her sanity, conflicted on how she feels about betraying Yellow Diamond and her entire homeworld.
Now I'm a traitor. A rebel! A crystal gem!
She tries to learn a bit about Earth too.
I wonder if all of them have flight capabilities.
And finds out that humans aren't nearly as strong as gems thanks to Garnet telling her off. Steven gives her some buckets to use as stilts so she can be kinda tall again.
Why, yes, Pearl. I did get taller. How correct of you to notice.
But she still isn't exactly fond of opening up to people yet. She starts to enjoy hanging around Garnet and Pearl more, but she still isn't sure what to think about the fused one. Garnet invites Peridot to stargaze with her and opens up about fusing, even offering to fuse with Peridot, which she's put off by, but eventually agrees to attempt it. She doesn't quite do it, but the two bond over at least trying to understand each other. Pretty humble way to end off the season, honestly. Let's see what's in store for Season 3. Alright, we're kicking off Season 3 with the episode Super Watermelon Island. Weird title? I know. The Watermelon Stevens return, but it looks like real Steven wakes up as one himself, as we can tell from him looking for his belly gem. Melon Steven finds a village of other Melon Stevens, and it seems like a peaceful town, until he's chosen as a sacrifice of some sort to Jasper and Aqua. Yep, they're back, and are named Malachite. Real Steven wakes up, informs the gems, and they head off to find her, leaving Steven and Peridot behind to keep them safe. Also, Peridot mentioned that earthquakes are a sign of the cluster getting bigger, so keep an eye out for those. Steven wants to help the gems with their mission though, and so he sleeps again so he can be a watermelon.
Wait, what do I do now? Don't just leave me here!
He wakes up and finds the 3 crystal gems fusing to become Alexandrite in order to fight, but is taken down. Steven runs to the other Melon Stevens and convinces them to fight, helping the gems take down Malachite, even splitting Aqua and Jasper up in the process. But then an earthquake cracked the earth and drags Jasper down, meaning Steven's gotta wake up and pilot the drill with Peridot so he can try and stop the cluster. Here we go. The next episode takes place right as Steven wakes up. He hops into the drill with Peridot and has to wait for 2 hours to dig all the way to the Earth's core and hit the cluster. Gem mutants start attacking the drill, but Steven wants to help them by bubbling their gems after they're lasered. But Peridot explains that they're just lost causes at this point, looking for the missing pieces of themselves that were destroyed by mutation. They reach the cluster, but while drilling, Steven starts hurting a lot and can see what seems to be souls of the gems that were ruined to make the cluster. Damn, that is dark.
Have any last words? I love you, Peridot.
Steven passes out and wakes up in some floaty dreamscape and talks to all the disjointed voices in the cluster. He tries to get the gems to try and just stay as fragments and enjoy each other, rather than form and destroy the Earth. Even though they're open to it, they're still driven to form by something. Steven hears the gems in pain, and so he starts bubbling them for safety, until he wakes up and sees the gems all bubbling one another. He helps out as well, and is able to bubble the entire cluster.
You did it! We did it together, and it was great!
The crystal gems return with Aqua, and Steven tells them about the bubble situation, leaving Pearl shocked. The next episode starts off with Steven reuniting with Lapis, albeit briefly as she leaves for Homeworld immediately after, saying she doesn't belong on Earth. Peridot also ends up staying in the barn as her new home instead of heading back with Steven and the other gems, which works out as Mr. Universe's van is full enough as it is, with Steven even deciding to take a lion home to save space. Before he finds Lion though, he finds Lapis on top of a silo, who stayed on Earth when she realized Homeworld wouldn't welcome her back after what she did to Jasper. Steven helps her find a new home, going from the country to Empire City, which is just New York, to Jersey, which is just New Jersey, complete with the lovely locals.
Quit flying in our sky, you moots!
Eventually, they see the galaxy warp, where Lapis says she was abandoned. Lapis explains she was visiting Earth for a short while until she was caught up and defeated in a war, and had her gem confused for a crystal gem. She was placed into a mirror and asked about the crystal gems, but she had no answers to their questions, and was eventually abandoned when the Homeworld gems were escaping Earth. She was eventually found by Pearl, and well, you know the rest of the story. Lapis decides to stay on Earth so she can see it all, with the barn being her home. But, you know, Peridot is already there, and Lapis isn't exactly a fan of hers.
No, it's not! It's mine! Right, Steven?
In the next episode, we see Lapis and Peridot trying to get along.
Ta-da!
But before they can make any meaningful improvements to their relationship, a homeworld drone comes in searching the Earth for Peridot, probably because she peeved Yellow Diamond. Thankfully, Aqua helps out and destroys the thing, and even asks if Peridot is okay, before another ruby comes out of the ship. Cliffhanger! The next episode starts with multiple rubies. Yeah, not just one, getting out of that pod thing. Garnet splits back into Ruby and Sapphire so Ruby can go undercover.
It seems like there are more of us than usual.
But eventually, that plan falls through, and the gems find out that the rubies are actually looking for Jasper. Steven blurts out a lie, saying that Jasper is on the planet Neptune, and the rubies fly off. Problem solved, I guess.
I checked the barn, and I just found a bunch of humans! Yep.
In the episode Mr. Greg, Mr. Universe gets a royalty check from his old manager Marty after he sells one of Greg's old songs for a burger commercial.
From the moment the meat hits the flame.
And now he's super rich. Steven and his dad decide to spend some of the money going to Empire City and bring along Pearl too, even though she and Greg don't get along well.
Me and Pearl haven't gotten along that well since I started dating your mother.
Things go well for a bit, but Pearl is still having trouble getting closer to Greg despite his best efforts. Pearl later sings, and it's implied that she was in love with Rose herself. But Greg ultimately won her heart, which pulls at her heart even more now that Rose is gone. That's brutal. Steven and Greg overhear the song, and Greg walks down to the hotel lobby feeling rough. Feeling the tension, Steven sings a song to both Greg and Pearl to try and get them on the same page, leading to the two bonding over their love and loss of Rose, with the two dancing towards the end of Steven's number. This show has so many touching episodes, I swear.
Le Bill.
Ooh.
In the episode Too Short to Ride, Peridot is peeved that she can't shapeshift like Steven and Amethyst can. But eventually finds out that she has telekinetic powers. That's all you really gotta know from this one.
10! That's 10!
In the episode Monster Reunion, Steven's healing spit starts to work again, and so he finds Centipedal's gem and kisses it. They're partially brought back, but Amethyst explains that Centipedal's gem is corrupted, not shattered, which can't be fixed by simple healing kisses. That said, they still allow Steven to give healing her a full-blown try, and let her stay unbubbled for a while. Through drawings, she explains to Steven that she was sent to Earth, but got caught up in the Gem War, but was ultimately left behind and damaged thanks to the diamonds. The two head to Senti's old ship, and he reunites her with her crew, who she lost in the war, with the crystal gems letting her stay in the ship.
Can I hang with you dudes? Amethyst, don't make fun.
Apparently, some scribbles she wrote down earlier were actually words in some gem writing language, so the crystal gems understood. That's pretty neat. In the next episode, Steven, Greg, and Lapis go out on a boat.
I may be rich, but buying a boat would be going a bit overboard.
Hey.
To try and reconnect Lapis with the water, who's scarred after being chained at the bottom of the ocean with Jasper for so long. The boat mysteriously breaks down, and Steven goes over to Lapis, who's still struggling, to inform her of the bad news. She feels like she's to blame, and vents to Steven, and eventually confesses that she misses Jasper due to the two being fused for so long. And to make things worse, turns out Jasper's the one who broke the boat. As she crawls onto the boat, wanting Lapis, Jasper begs Lapis to fuse once more, saying she was wrong about viewing fusion as disgusting before. Thankfully, Lapis comes to, and realizing what they had wasn't healthy, punching Jasper miles into the sky to really send the message home. That one's pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie.
Guess I bought a boat after all.
In the episode Gem Hunt, Steven and Pearl bring Connie along to help find a corrupted gem, but find Jasper again, who takes down the corrupted gem and takes its literal gem. She's planning something. In the next episode, the monsters from the previous episode return and attack Steven, Connie, and Amethyst while the other gems are out searching for Jasper.
No surprises while I'm on duty. Surprise!
Turns out it's Jasper who sent the corrupted monsters, wanting to make her own army. Amethyst goes after Jasper herself while Connie and Steven take out the monsters. But Amethyst is beaten by Jasper and almost shattered. Luckily, Steven and Connie fuse and beat her, saving Amethyst. But she's obviously taken down a peg in the self-worth department after her loss. The episode Bismuth starts with Steven going into Lion's Mane and accidentally unbubbling a gem named, well, Bismuth. Steven brings her into his house, with Garnet and Pearl quickly recognizing her as one of the original crystal gems.
Hey, did somebody lose a pearl? Who do you belong to?
Nobody!
Amethyst doesn't know her though. Bismuth asks where the rest of the crystal gems are, but is told they've been shattered since the Gem War ended 5,300 years ago. Bismuth is updated on what's going on with the homeworld gems, and the gang decides to go to the Forge. They get to the Forge, and well, it's a forge. Bismuth is a blacksmith who makes weapons and gives the crystal gems enhancements to their current artillery.
Hey, it's a pleasure doing Bismuth with you.
When Bismuth asks Steven what he has for weapons, he shows off his shield and Rose's sword, which apparently was Bismuth's finest work. Except for one work of hers she never fully finished, called the Breaking Point, which can shatter gems instantly. Steven isn't a fan of shattering, and prefers Rose's sword, which just knocks them into their small gem form. Bismuth says if Steven won't use it, she will. But Steven doesn't want any gem to shatter, and the two fight, with Bismuth revealing that Rose bubbled her after having the same conversation many years ago. Steven beats her with Rose's sword, and says that he'll tell the gems what happened, unlike his mother.
Then you really are better than her.
Before proceeding to bubble her once more and toss the breaking point into lava. Well, that's pretty interesting. You know, this video is super long. I'm kind of running out of stuff to say at the end of these recaps. In the next episode, Steven and Amethyst check in on Lapis and Peridot, who are getting along great.
This is the leaf Steven gave me. It reminds me of the time Steven gave me a leaf.
Amethyst, though, is mad they aren't training to take on Jasper, who she's been obsessed with after losing her fight with. To cheer her up, Peridot reveals that though Amethyst and Jasper are supposed to be alike, both being made on Earth, their kindergartens are radically different.
Hey, Lapis, are you okay?
Yeah.
And Jasper's was nothing but a beta, while Amethyst's was more advanced prime kindergarten. Amethyst wants to check the beta out, and they come across the hole where Jasper was made, being much bigger than the others. Peridot looks for flaws, but comes to realize it's the most perfect exit hole she's ever seen, driving Amethyst to want to beat Jasper even more. They find holes that look like new, but they turn out to have been dug out from the outside, and figure out they're cages of corrupted monsters, all made by Jasper, who once again reveals herself. Amethyst tries to sneak up on Jasper, but is caught, and she forces Peridot and Steven to stay behind while she takes her alone. She tries her best, but still can't make Jasper budge. Steven cheers Amethyst up, and the two hug, and then fuse into smoky quartz.
I've got plenty of tricks. Ever see Sink the Dink?
Who's got a yo-yo weapon thing, apparently. They free a bunch of Jasper's monsters, and even with Jasper fusing with a corruption, Smoky Quartz beats her. Jasper starts corrupting herself, and Steven tries to go in to heal her but is slashed when he gets too close. Jasper goes on about how Rose Quartz and Earth ruined her and her diamond. Not yellow diamond, but pink diamond. Uh-oh, new villain alert! Luckily, just as Jasper goes full corrupted, Peridot takes her down, and Steven bubbles her away, with the three eagerly heading home to tell the other crystal gems, but the rubies are back. Uh-oh, again. So yeah, in the episode Back to the Moon, the rubies have returned, looking for Jasper again, but Amethyst gets the idea to shapeshift into her, passing the purple off as a tan from the sun, and the rubies buy it.
Curse this planet!
After Jasper says she wants to stay on Earth to watch her prisoners, the rubies say she'll have to file a report to Yellow Diamond on the moon, and so they head off.
Curses! I can't believe we've been caught.
They arrive at the same moon base we saw in the episode It Could Have Been Great, but this time, we see another diamond mural, this time of Pink Diamond, who the rubies explain was the head of the Earth colony. She's responsible for Jasper and all other gems who came from here. But Rose Quartz, one of her own Earth gems, rebelled and apparently shattered her. Steven doesn't believe it. The communicator is broken thanks to what Garnet did the last time the gems went to the moon. So Amethyst, who's having trouble keeping the facade up, tells the rubies to head to Homeworld and write her report for her. They go to do so, but just as they're leaving, figure things out, making the gems have to fuse to send them into space. However, Steven's knocked out too. Oops. In the final episode of Season 3, Steven is bubbled and soars through space along with one of the rubies. The ruby says she wanted to see Rose Quartz on Earth, and Steven tries to show her evidence that she's part of him, but she won't believe it. The ruby, who Steven calls Eyeball, is hit by a meteoroid and has her gem cracked, so Steven uses his spit to help.
What was that supposed to be? When the cosmos is wrong?
And finally, Eyeball believes him, so she attacks him. Wanting the glory of defeating Rose Quartz back on homeworld, Steven is forced to send her out into space and is left alone in his bubble. Steven is found by the gems, and he asks if what was said about Rose Quartz was true, and it is. She had to shatter Pink Diamond to save the Earth, and it was her only option despite how much she didn't want to do it. War makes people do awful things. Even the best of us, I guess. Season 4 time! In the episode Mindful Education, Steven and Connie train with Pearl as Stefani, but a flash of a scarred kid coming from Connie throws them off, and she runs away in distress. Connie tells Steven she accidentally beat a kid at her school up due to her fighting instincts, and so Garnet vows to help them and their fusion. Garnet emphasizes that if one half of a fusion is falling apart, then the whole fusion will be at risk, so the two must take comfort in each other and also aim to better themselves. Connie takes Garnet's advice and patches things up with the kid she hurt, apologizing and getting her mind back in action once more. But Steven then has anxiety over Bismuth and Jasper and Eyeball and his mom. Dang, Steven is a bundle of trauma. I feel horrible for this guy. In the episode Gem Harvest, Steven heads back to the barn to check on Lapis and Peridot, and the two have started a farm. They think it'll work the same way as farming gems, in the sense that they'll be living and walking around, but get disappointed when Steven tells them how farming on Earth actually is. To cheer them up, Steven licks a pumpkin seed while they aren't looking, and the next day, the seed comes to life as a pumpkin dog thing. Shortly after, a plane flies over their heads, and apparently, it's piloted by the owner of the barn, and it turns out to be Greg's cousin Andy. So yeah, Steven's got an uncle now.
Which one of these girls is the wife? I gotta give him my condolences, right?
We find out that Greg's actual last name is DeMaio, and not Universe. And also find out that Andy isn't a big fan of illegal aliens, literally inhabiting his family barn. Steven says that technically they're kinda family, considering Rose, and proposes they sway his opinion with a family meal. And so the gems start cooking. They use an oven fashioned from old plane parts, which Andy isn't pleased with. So a couple of the gems go off to find stuff to make the party even better. The gems return with a bunch of human-themed party favors. You know, birth, death, marriage, all the good stuff, and officially convince Andy to join them for dinner. The gems all bond.
Oh, where are my manners?
Oh, where are my manners?
But Andy feels a bit left out and decides to just give the gems the barn and fly off. Steven has Lapis fly him up, and Andy opens up that all of the family left him over the years, starting with Greg. Steven gets him to come back though, and all ends well.
No, say Claude. Claude.
In the episode Steven's Dream, Steven asks his dad if Rose Quartz ever said anything about Pink Diamond, but apparently there were some things she didn't like to talk about, and that was one of them. That night, Steven dreams of a pink palanquin, thank you Connie, and Steven asks the other crystal gems about it. Pearl and Garnet obviously know something, but won't say.
I can't get near her.
Ah! Her! Her who?
And so Steven gets fed up and goes off to find it himself. He grabs his dad, who gets Andy to fly them to South Korea. And after some fun, the two arrive at the garden from Steven's dream. Steven's eyes tear up when they arrive too, so they figure they're in the right area. They find a palanquin, but it seems to be in perfect condition and blue. They look around more and see the pink one, but also see a giant hooded figure, who we can assume is Blue Diamond. Mr. Universe goes over to them and consoles the giant blue gem, who's assumedly mourning Pink Diamond. Mr. Universe says he knows how loss feels, and the gem says that he doesn't deserve the fate the Earth will deal him thanks to a geo-weapon. She abducts him and flies off into space, as Garnet saves Steven, saying they've got to go after him. The episode went from 0 to 100 so freaking fast. Wow. In the next episode, Steven, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl head off into space to find Mr. Universe, who they suspect is at a human zoo the Diamonds had during the Gem War. Steven makes the ship go into lightspeed.
No, we're not okay!
But thankfully stops the ship right before it crashes into the zoo, saving the gang about 70 years worth of space travel. Yeah, I don't think Greg would have lived that long. In the next episode, the gems disguise themselves to sneak into the human zoo, with Garnet splitting into Ruby and Sapphire and Amethyst shapeshifting into a more normal-looking Amethyst. They get a tour from Holly Blue Agate. Some of the Amethyst soldiers alert the group that Blue Diamond is on her way, so the tour is cut short, and Steven is sent into containment, where he eventually finds his dad. The next episode picks up after the last, with Steven finding his dad, who's been hanging out with the descendants of the humans brought to the zoo thousands of years ago, who've never even seen Earth. Steven and Greg find the door out, but struggle to open it. The natives say that the only time the door has ever opened was when someone was hurt, and so Steven punches his dad, but no one comes through the door to help. As part of the local Utopia rules, they have a choose-a-name, where couples are selected. But Greg explains that people actually get to choose who they're with on Earth, and so everyone chooses Greg.
I choose Greg.
And I also choose Greg.
Of course, Greg denies their choosing. They all get sad and go crazy. Amethyst guards storm in, and before Steven and Greg can escape, they're caught. This can't end well. The next episode starts with Steven and Greg being tossed in front of a bunch of Amethyst soldiers, and looks like they've caught actual Amethyst too. Just kidding, she's getting along great with all her Earth sisters, even other Jaspers. Holly Blue Agate shows up and tells the Amethysts that Blue Diamond has arrived, and they all get taught their stations. With Steven and Greg sneaking off, they go into a room full of bubbled rose quartz gems, and Blue Diamond walks in, followed by Yellow Diamond. Blue wants to keep the gems bubbled, as they're the last remnants of Pink Diamond's legacy, but Yellow wants them destroyed as punishment for what happened on Earth. Everyone starts to sneak off ship, but at the last second, Holly Blue Agate sees what's going on, but is swiftly beaten by the gems. Everyone heads home in what apparently isn't even the craziest moment of Greg's life. Well, his life must be exciting, I guess. Alright, it's time for yet another Lion episode. Steven is looking back at the tape his mom left for him, and he is majorly overanalyzing it. Conveniently, Lion hacks up a key, so Steven heads to any place that's mom-related he can think of, but there's no keyhole that works with it. Lion takes Steven to where he first found him, and travels across the desert to the proper keyhole, where, of course, behind it is a bunch of junk. Steven finds another VHS tape, but this time it's marked for someone named Nora. Lion takes him to Nora, but it's just his dad who plays the tape, with it being exactly the same as the first one, just with the name Steven replaced with Nora. Greg explains it's just because that was the name that they had picked if he ended up being a girl.
When you have a kid, you have no idea who they're gonna be. Even Garnet couldn't predict it.
Which shatters Steven. He hoped this would help him figure out his destiny. He plays the rest of the tape and figures out his destiny is just to be his mom's kid, and that's alright. In the episode Are You My Dad?, Steven finds Onion's brother, Sour Cream, handing out missing flyers for Onion. Steven tries to put a sign up in the Big Donut, but the store is closed. So he heads off to find Lars and Sadie, who also seem to be missing. While looking for his friends, Steven finds a tiny blue gem who asks him if he's their dad, who flies off when he says no. He tells the Crystal Gems and Connie about what he saw, who are confused as to how she'd even have a dad, as that's not how gems work. While looking for, well, everyone, Steven and Connie find the blue gem again.
Are you my dad? What?
Who calls a giant yellow gem named Topaz to abduct Connie. Turns out they have all the missing people as well. The blue gem tosses Steven away as they continue to hunt for her dad. What is going on? In the final episode of Season 4, Steven tells the Crystal Gems about what happened last episode, and they figure it's a Topaz fusion alongside an Aquamarine, who are for some reason after Steven's friends. They find the Homeworld Gems, who apparently were sent to look for 6 human variations reported by a Peridot of some kind. Turns out it was Steven who listed off the variations, including my dad. Oops.
There's my dad, Connie, Lars and Sadie, the mailman, Onion, I think.
Steven says he's my dad and gets absorbed to save his friends. He's taken into a ship and the Crystal Gems are left behind. Steven uses his bubble while he's inside Topaz, popping him and freeing the others. Things look bad for the captured humans as Topaz is beating Steven and Connie.
Lars.
But the gems fuse and become Alexandrite, grabbing the ship before it fully takes off. Everyone jumps off, but at the last second, the Lapis gem freezes everyone, and so Steven decides to sacrifice himself. He says that they don't have exactly what they're looking for, but they have something even better. Himself, Rose Quartz, the leader of the rebellion. They take Steven on board and fly off, leaving everyone behind. Man, that cliffhanger came out of nowhere. After he proclaimed himself to be Rose Quartz to let his friends go in the last episode, Steven is flying through space as a captive of Aquamarine. Yeah, it turns out that tiny blue gem wasn't a lapis. Bad news though. Lars never left the ship either, and so he's forced to stay on board. As Steven and Lars start coming to terms with one another and bonding a bit, Topaz gets emotional.
I don't know what Topaz would do if she didn't have Topaz.
And decides to let them go. But Aquamarine catches them in the act, who quickly threatens Topaz and gets her back into her command, taking Lars and Steven in different directions. In the next episode, Steven wakes up in some void thing, ready for whatever Homeworld has in store for him, which turns out to be a trial. And Steven's got a lawyer. I'd love to see the Homeworld Constitution. Oh, it looks like Yellow and Blue Diamond are judges for it, so by no means is this going to be a fair trial at all. To prove Steven is rose quartz despite his form, the opposing lawyer brings Eyeball to the court, who explains he saw Steven whip out her shield in his bubbles and healed his gem, which only rose quartz could do. Steven admits he shattered Pink Diamond, but Blue Diamond wants to hear exactly how he did it. He explains to the best of his ability, but because he wasn't there himself, he keeps saying he guesses or thinks. His lawyer is perplexed, so Steven tells her he wasn't there, but it was Rose Quartz who shattered Pink Diamond, and he's got Rose Quartz's gem, so he'll take the blame. The lawyer realizes things don't make sense, figuring it out that it's incredibly odd that Rose was able to sneak up on Pink Diamond in front of all of her forces.
Whoever did this was already close to Pink Diamond.
And figures someone with authority had to have done something to make that happen, like one of the diamonds themselves. And so, she's promptly squashed. Yellow Diamond is clearly mad, but Blue Diamond keeps asking her questions, giving Steven and Lars time to escape into Homeworld, which, yeah, we finally see for the first time. In the next episode, Steven and Lars are on the run, but a fusion, or something, guides the two down a mine and towards a massive kindergarten that looks abandoned, with just a few other strange gems hiding out there as well, who say they're off-color or flawed. One gem, Pod Parasha, is like garnet and can see the future, but only says it 5 seconds after it's already happened. And turns out the gem that saved Steven and Lars, Rutile, isn't even a fusion and just came out wrong. A search drone followed Steven and Lars into the mines, but it turns out Lars can't be seen by the drones because he doesn't have a gem. And so he saves everyone by bashing the heck out of the drones. He gets blown into the wall, and even dies briefly. But Steven's healing tears bring him back to life. And yeah, not spit this time. Also, Lars is pink now. In the next episode, Lars is freaking out over his new body, and Steven figures out he's a lot like Lion, and can even go into his hair. Steven heads in and figures out he can head back to Earth through Lion's mane as well, meaning the two are connected. He brings back food for Lars, but he isn't hungry. Must be the magic or something, I don't know.
You went back to Earth? What the heck? Is my head like a wormhole?
The off-color gems are confused when Steven brings up Earth, as they still believe the diamonds decimated it a long time ago. But Steven assures them it's still around and is a place where you can be yourself. Steven tries to bring Lars through his own head, but it doesn't work. And so the off-world stay with Lars while Steven heads back to Earth to figure out a way to come back for them. The gems make it home and see Steven, and they all hug, as they've been stranded with no ship of their own to get off the Earth. Weird episode, but I mean, good thing Steven's home. In the episode Raising the Barn, Steven's processing the issue of Connie being upset with him over giving up so easily. It happened in the episode before, but don't worry, that's all you've really got to know. Peridot and Lapis and Pumpkin call Steven, and he explains what happened on Homeworld. But Lapis gets worried and wants to get off Earth before the diamonds come looking. Lapis lifts the entire barn so Peridot and herself can keep their things, but Pumpkin goes missing right before, and so the three go off to find him. Peridot finds Pumpkin and admits to Lapis she doesn't want to leave.
I don't want to go either.
What?
But instead fight for Earth when the time comes. Lapis heads off anyways, scarred by the last time she was caught in a war, and Peridot is forced to live in Steven's bathroom yet again. In the episode Lars of the Stars, Connie, who's not mad anymore, and Steven go through Lion to drop a care package off for Lars, but he's caught up in a giant space rebel thing with the off-colors, and apparently he's now their captain.
We're about to be discovered by Emerald.
Steven and Connie fuse as Stefani and try to help, but are shot down and barrel to an unknown planet. Another cliffhanger. I'm kinda running out of fun things to say at the end of these tidbits, but the show is really, really good. So don't let my lack of original things to say make you think otherwise. In the next episode, Stefani crashes onto the unknown planet and finds a tower that seems almost familiar. The two fall asleep and dream of a yellow diamond who's taking over a world and starting a colony. Stefani says they want their own colony.
I want my own army! I want my own planet!
But Yellow Diamond says she needs to start acting important. We find out at the end of the dream that Stefani was taking the place of Pink Diamond in what we can assume is an actual real event. Oh man. The two figure that the place they're at is a moon base, just like the gems have on Earth's moon, and look up to what used to be a colony. And, oh, it doesn't look good. Lars saves the two after a brief bird blob fight, and the two head back through his head. Lars is taking a while to get back home, and so Steven brings Garnet onto the ship to pass the time. She compliments the off-colors and brings up Rose Quartz, who they all know as an evil urban legend of some sort. Garnet explains the origin of the crystal gems and Pink Diamond's cruel attitude towards sparing Earth, and how when Rose destroyed Pink Diamond, the other gems got so mad that they destroyed all gems on Earth. Or so they thought. She rallies the other gems to the cause, before Steven tells Garnet about his dream. Worried that Pink Diamond may still be alive, she assures him that they're fine, and the gang heads for Earth again. In the episode Can't Go Back, Ronaldo, remember him, wakes up Steven in the middle of the night to show him something weird on the moon, which turns out to be Lapis and the barn. All this time, Lapis has been overlooking the gems back on Earth by using an orb on the moon base. Remember when we pointed it out all the way back? There's your payoff, folks. Lapis thinks she can't go back because of the way she left, and because she worries about the bad things that could happen. But Steven tries to help her realize it's not too late. While chilling with Lapis, Steven falls asleep and dreams of a conversation the Diamonds had with Pink, who's chastised by the others for wanting to get rid of the Earth colony due to the uprising. The end of the dream shows what looks like Pearl approaching from behind with Rose's sword.
Mom's sword? Is that Pearl?
Scaring Steven right as he wakes up. Steven tells Lapis, causing her to run away once more into space. What could the dream mean, though? In the next episode, as she's in the middle of getting a new phone from Amethyst,
You really should have a case for this.
I do.
Steven asks Pearl if she shattered Pink Diamond, which causes her to panic and walk right out of the room. Steven gets a text from Pearl saying she wants to talk, but she says she didn't send anything and has trouble finding her phone in her head, which is where she put it last. Steven goes into her head and finds a pearl inside Pearl's pearl. Complicated enough for ya? Well, Steven goes inside the pearl of the pearl inside Pearl's pearl, and does so again and again, looking for both the phone and the information he wants. He finally gets to a memory where it's revealed that it was indeed Pearl impersonating Rose who shattered Pink Diamond. But that's not exactly all. Rose Quartz was actually Pink Diamond all along, and faked being shattered, all to try and make sure the Earth is left alone.
No one can ever find out we did this. I never want to look back.
Now that is a heck of a bombshell. Steven leaves Pearl's head with the phone, and Amethyst and Garnet hear the truth themselves. So yeah, it was Pearl within a pearl, within a pearl, within a pearl, within a pearl that sent the messages to Steven. Got it. That makes total sense. The next episode shows how the other gems handle the news about Rose Quartz. Garnet splits back into Ruby and Sapphire runs off distraught, causing Steven and Pearl to go after her. Pearl explains Rose Quartz never wanted to hurt anyone, telling her about her love for Earth life since the very beginning in the Amethyst Garden, where she changed her form to look like them. Over time, she saw more and more of the Earth, and saw how her colony was going to destroy it. She brought her concerns to the Diamond, and they laughed it off, making the zoo to satisfy her desire to preserve earthly life. She decided to take matters into her own hands, fully embracing the switch from Pink Diamond to Rose Quartz. She was initially just fighting for Earth, but when seeing Garnet and how she was a fusion between two different gems, decided to fight for gem life too. She and Pearl almost fused before they came across Garnet, and the rest is history. Sapphire understands everything and rushes home to Ruby, who's only left a note. So in the next episode, Steven and Amethyst go off to find Ruby, while Sapphire and Pearl bawl their eyes out. On the way, Amethyst admits she doesn't want to be so stuck in the past, and is a bit mad that Rose isn't who she said she was. She admits she doesn't want another 1,000-year-old conflict dumped on her or Steven too, and Steven relates to her a bit, and realizes she's coming from a place of kindness. To wrap things up, they eventually find Ruby with Mr. Universe sitting on a cliffside, who ends up being alright about the matter. In the episode Maid of Honor, the Gems and Steven set up a wedding for Ruby and Sapphire for their refusing, and Steven decides to bring back some old friends to help celebrate.
We've been stuffing these envelopes all day.
Steven decides to unbubble Bismuth, the only member of the old crystal gems who wasn't shattered or corrupted by the blast from the other diamonds way back when. He tells her the truth about Rose, and she understands everything, and chills out a little from the last time we saw her.
Thanks for talking to me.
Right as Steven tries to unveil Bismuth as a surprise, she doesn't come out, and Steven finds her back in the forge, figuring they won't want to see her after she attacks Steven. He convinces her that it'll be fine, and she even brings back some rings for the wedding. That is sweet. In the next episode, Ruby and Sapphire finally get married and fuse to make Garnet. However, during the festivities, the diamonds arrive and free the cluster. But luckily, it's controlling itself and on the gem's side. Blue Diamond approaches Steven and the gems.
Blue Diamond.
Guess it's time to work the old universe charm.
No! And Steven tries to talk to her, but she won't hear it, using her power to make everyone drop to their knees crying. Connie tries to stop her as well, but Blue Diamond shatters Rose's sword, and Garnet clings to her knees, only for Lapis to return and drop a barn on Blue Diamond. Blue Diamond uses her crying power again, but Lapis resists, and together, all the gems and the cluster take down the diamonds. Or so it seems. The diamonds knock out Peridot.
I'm the one you're missing! I'm Pink Diamond!
You.
And then squish Steven, causing him to wake up in some weird ghost state where he can telepathically communicate with people. He gets through to the diamonds and is able to tell him the truth about Rose.
Impossible. It's aura.
And he finally wakes up to them all gathered around him, no longer fighting. In the next episode, Steven catches the diamonds up on everything and gets the two to see the results of their blast all those years ago, corrupting the gems on Earth. He shows them Centipedal, and the three almost bring her entirely back to her normal form.
Oh, Pink. How many perfectly adequate gems did you have us ruin?
But supposedly need one more diamond to help. White Diamond, who's unlike the other diamonds and hasn't left Homeworld for eons. Steven, the gems, minus Bismuth, Peridot, and Lapis, and the diamonds, head for Homeworld in his mom's ship, which is just a set of giant legs. Okay? They arrive, but White Diamond only brings Steven to her, and quickly places him in some strange room as the episode ends. Well, this ain't great. Turns out Steven was brought to Rose's old room, which is filled with these tiny little gray guys. Okay? Pearl is sent to give Steven his things, and follows as he's called to a meeting with Yellow Diamond.
Pink Diamond.
Please, call me Steven.
Pink Steven.
Apparently, the few words Steven had with White was a record, and he's called off to meet with Blue Diamond. Blue says White used to be around the other diamonds more, but since Pink was shattered, she became super distant. Pearl tells Steven Pink used to have big parties that all the diamonds went to, and so he decides he'll throw one to try to talk to White, complete with a new snazzy dress. Also, everyone else is brought back to Rose's room. In the next episode, the party is set up, but has super strict rules on what can and can't be done and who can and can't be there. During the party, Steven does his best to act regal to impress White Diamond, but it turns out she decided to not even show up. Connie gets Steven to ditch the elegant ways, and the two dance and fuse, which upsets the diamonds, who promptly grab the two and lock them up after poofing the other gems away for sticking up for Steven. In the next episode, Steven tries to call Bismuth from his jail using his sleepy psychic ghost form, but ends up becoming a watermelon Steven again. He and the other Melon Stevens make a boat. He barely makes it back home thanks to Lion, and he finally talks to Bismuth and his dad, telling them he needs backup. In the final episode of Season 5, Steven speaks with Lapis, who says White isn't happy. But Steven suddenly starts seeing himself as Pink Diamond, and sees a vision of everyone he loves being shattered by the diamonds, before he wakes up to find it was all a dream. Blue Diamond actually walks in this time and asks for an apology, but Steven isn't sorry. And so Blue eventually figures out her mistreatment of Pink was what caused her to rebel in the first place. She helps Steven and Connie try to escape and grab the other gems, but Blue runs into Yellow right before and the two fight. Eventually, the gems are freed, but still not back to their full forms. But Yellow Diamond is swayed to the side of Steven's cause.
Stop using your power on me. I'm not.
They all try to escape home, but White Diamond catches them before and fuses a part of her ship with Rose's ship. The armed ships show up and take down White Diamond, and apparently Bismuth, Lapis, and Peridot were piloting them. Steven gets a moment to speak to White, but she doesn't listen, and drains the color from the other diamonds in a really freaky way. Yeesh. The gems are sent plummeting, and Steven goes to save them, bringing them back to full form by fusing with them, becoming Smoky Quartz with Amethyst, Rainbow Quartz 2.0 with Pearl, and Sunstone with Garnet, who saves the other gems from White Diamond with the power of some pretty swaggy sunglasses. Sunstone can't quite reach White Diamond though, and so the four fuse together to make Obsidian, and with the help of Peridot, Lapis, Bismuth, and Connie with a new sword, get into the eye of White Diamond's robot. White sucks the color from all the other gems.
It's time to come out, pink.
And pulls Steven's gem out of his belly, which forms into another pink Steven and also splits the screen in two. Okay, I guess that works.
She's gone!
Anyway, the two Stevens form again and make White Diamond turn pink from embarrassment and admit she's flawed, which was her greatest fear. They all head home. The off-colors reach Earth.
No more Diamond Authority!
And Lars reunites with Sadie. Steven and the other diamonds heal the corrupted gems, and the Steven sings one last song to the gems as the series comes to a close. Is what I would say if there wasn't a movie and a spin-off that I still gotta cover. Come on, look at how much longer the video is. You better not believe that we're done yet. Okay, it's movie time, here we go. We start with White Diamond announcing that Steven is taking the Pink Diamond throne on Homeworld. Oh, he's also 16 now, meaning the movie takes place 2 years after the finale of the show. Steven says he wants to stay on Earth, but the Diamonds insist he stays and takes the throne. He goes home anyway. Steven meets up with Connie back on Earth, who's heading to space camp for a while. She gives Steven a kiss before she goes, leaving Steven floored. And the audience may be not so floored because, I mean, come on, I think we all knew that would happen eventually. Amethyst, Bismuth, Peridot, and Lapis are all making a new home for the gems. And eventually, all the crystal gems reunite to take a picture together to celebrate the perfect future. It isn't perfect for long though, as a mysterious new gem comes down to Earth, talking about how she doesn't jive with Steven's peace message, and how she knew Pink Diamond herself, but before Pearl can explain who she is, she poofs the gems, and is then poofed herself by Steven after she slashes him with her scythe a couple of times. Unfortunately, Steven can't bubble her due to the slashes which hurt his gem. Pearl comes back.
Please identify yourself.
Greg Universe?
But not as per usual, instead acting like a new Pearl, meaning like a servant. Everyone else comes back as early versions of themselves too, all not knowing who Steven is or any of their history. And the heart gem that caused all of this returns, and is apparently named Spinel. And if all that isn't bad enough,
what have you done to us?
The drill thing Spinel came in on is still plugged into Earth and injecting stuff, and Steven can't even put things in Lion. What is going on here? Steven heads over to Peridot, Lapis, and Bismuth to try and make sense of things, but all he concludes is that the scythe slashes not only reset all of the gems, but also reset his powers. The four eventually decide to try and have them re-go through past experiences to bring them back to where they were before all this. They start by trying to fuse Sapphire and Ruby by having Ruby save her again. But this time, Sapphire saves Ruby. They fuse, but still don't remember Steven.
Attention, everyone. Greg Universe has arrived.
And so he decides to try for Amethyst next. Steven finds Amethyst, and through some ad song singing, he gets her back to normal. But she isn't too jazzed about Spinel being alongside Steven. Meanwhile, the injector drill thing is damaging the world and will eliminate all organic life within 41 hours, and it seems the only person who can stop it is Spinel. They realize they have to bring her back, but need info on her to do so.
Showcasing a promising ensemble in the rock and roll genre.
And the only one who knows anything about her is Pearl. So next up, they gotta save Pearl. Amethyst decides to try and get to her by singing while looking like Rose. But Pearl has found a new leader in Greg, who she won't take her eyes off of.
Don't worry, I can clap for you.
Steven realizes he needs to make Greg disappear like Rose did, so Pearl can feel the same emotions from then. So he fuses with his dad. Okay, that's kind of weird. They bring Pearl back through a song, but Spinel runs off saddened that she was left out of the song. Pearl tells Steven that Spinel used to be Rose's playmate, but she hasn't heard from her in 6,000 years. And so Steven runs off to try and find her. She beams him to the garden she and Rose used to play, and explains that once Rose got her colony, she told her to stand still until she came back. But she never did. When she saw the message from Steven, she was heartbroken, and so she went to go enact revenge. Steven convinced her to come back to Earth to make new friends, and she seems eager to be Steven's friend most of all. Steven gets Spinel to fix the drill.
Thanks, Spinel.
Ah, gee, what are friends for?
But she eventually questions if that's the only reason Steven befriended her, and gets mad thinking that they'll just erase her memory once more with the scythe. Through saying that's not the truth, Garnet gains her memories again, and the crystal gems are back in full form, Steven confronts Spinel alone, regains his powers, and eventually has her realize that she's been a little counterproductive if she's wanted to make Steven her friend. She stops fighting him, and the drill blows up, so Steven gets to work slowly kissing the ground to fix it. The diamonds show up and decide to take Spinel as a new friend who reminds them of Rose, and the world ever so slowly goes back to a new normal. The end. Except, we've now got a spin-off to tackle, so yeah, let's move on to that. In the first episode of Steven Universe Future, we see that Steven and the Gems are running a school for any gem that is uncorrupted. The only one that Gems can't convince of the earthly ways is Jasper, who fights Steven and brings out a never-before-seen pink power of his. See? He turns pink. He wants to harness the power with help from Jasper, but she isn't too keen on it, and the episode ends. We're gonna get through these fairly quickly, I swear. This video is so long. In the episode Rose Buds, the humans from the human zoo introduce Steven to a bunch of rose quartzes, with one looking exactly like his mom. Steven gets uncomfortable, and they all figure it out and start to leave.
I know, right?
Steven, we can't both exist.
But eventually, they all bond over the fact that they're kinda siblings who are stuck in the shadow of rose quartz. In the next episode, Pink Diamond's original Pearl comes to Steven for help fixing her gem, and after his spit doesn't work, they go to the reef. It's revealed her damage is emotional, and was due to Pink Diamond, who tossed her around when she got the news she couldn't have a colony. And the reef starts to try and repair both pearls by resetting them. The two fuse, and with some help from Steven, thankfully make it out okay. The episode ends with the pearls coming to terms that Rose may not have been the greatest person. In the episode Why So Blue, Steven and Lapis go off-planet to find a pair of other Lapis who are terraforming a distant world. They try talking things through, but they still want to destroy the world. But through a little bit of convincing, Lapis manages to get them to stop, and even gets one of the pair to sign up for Steven's school. In the next episode, the Off-Colors are graduating from Little Home School, and Sadie and Lars have lost a lot of the friendship and chemistry they used to have. Lars is deciding to leave Earth and go back into space with the Off-Colors now that they're through school.
Hey, come here.
And Sadie is going off with her new partner and ending her band. Steven isn't quite ready for all the change while he's stuck still teaching as well, and his insecurities manifest into a giant bubble keeping everyone together. Thankfully, he comes to terms with his emotions before he crushes everyone and realizes he needs to quit teaching at the little homeschool and grow up a little himself. In the episode Prickly Pear, Steven is coping with his friends all going in different directions as they grow up by gardening, but ends up accidentally bringing a cactus to life. Cactus Steven grows quickly and starts repeating everything Steven says, including his insecure thoughts out loud. Eventually, it grows to the point where it walks, and so Steven has to stop it before the gems hear what he's been saying. Steven saves the day by hugging the cactus, and the gems realize that Steven has some deep-seated issues that need settling one way or another. In the episode Together Forever, Steven realizes Connie's heading off for college, and we already figured out he's not great with change. While talking things over with Ruby, Steven is told to propose to her. That is some drastic stuff.
Proposal bench!
He asks Sapphire about the future, but she says love can't be predicted, but that he should do it. And so Steven heads off to get ready. He proposes to her using the glow bracelet he gave her the first time they met, but she says she can't because they're so young, which leaves Steven in a mess of himself. Thankfully, Garnet helps cheer him up for the time being as the episode ends. With Steven dealing with the fallout of his failed proposal, the next episode shows Steven literally having some growing pains and having to go see Connie's mom in the hospital to make sure this isn't a human-related disease. I mean, he's glowing pink. As far as I know, that doesn't sound like any human disease. Turns out the stress Steven went through at a young age is affecting how he deals with even minor stress today. And it all got worse exponentially when Connie had to turn Steven down.
Steven, you don't think...
Thankfully, Steven's dad helps calm him down and put things into perspective, but it's clear Steven still has to find himself. In the next episode, Steven and his dad hit the road to try and see if Steven can find some meaning, with the two stopping by Greg's parents' place to grab something that could help. Mr. Universe grabs a box of musical stuff he had to hide from his parents due to their strict rules, and they head back onto the road with Steven driving. Turns out, Greg changed his last name from DeMeo to Universe when he heard a song that made him want to leave his parents' home and go couch surfing and band touring, all referring to someone named Mr. Universe. Steven can't believe he'd leave a normal home to do that, and yells at him for raising Steven in a van and never sending him to school. leaving him only to be with the gems and fighting across the galaxy, and eventually crashes the van in a panic. He's still super pissed with his dad as the episode ends too. Yikes. In the next episode, Steven slows the world down while he's talking feelings with the gems, and takes the chance to go run off to Jasper. He explains to Jasper what he's feeling, but Jasper insists the only thing he can do is use his power to take his aggression out, which he's been doing on some trees, destroying the wilderness. Jasper trains Steven, and within just 3 days, he became ultra powerful and spars with Jasper, who realizes Steven isn't going easy. Steven decides to not hold back and accidentally shatters her. My jaw dropped when I first saw this. Luckily, he takes the shattered gem back to the bathroom at home and miraculously brings Jasper back, who then bows to her diamond. Yeah, this is not good. In the next episode, Steven heads to Homeworld to see if the diamonds can help him, and has Spinel take him to them. Yellow can't help entirely with Steven's physical problems, as it's an emotional issue as well. And Blue can't help with the emotion issue because it's also a matter of self-worth. So Steven heads to White Diamond. He thinks back to how much pain she put him through back in the day, and tries to take it out on her by shattering her gem, but thankfully is stopped right before. The episode ends with Steven running off, realizing this trip wasn't any help either.
Let us help you! We're your family!
Final episodes. Here we go. Steven, in panic mode, decides he's fine and wants to go back to just helping people, starting with Little Homeschool. He grows a bunch more Cactus Stevens, ruining Peridot's class, accidentally destroys Bismuth's anvil, and obliterates a good chunk of the school grounds while playing baseball. Steven's friends confront him, and he breaks down, trembling on the floor and admitting he's a monster, and then actually turns into a monster. All the gems start trying to help him get out of his monster form, but it's no use, as even the cluster can't hold him back. It takes Connie to rally everyone to show Steven love in his time of need to get through to him, having everyone hug him and show him support. She kisses him on the head, and he goes back to human form. The next episode has Steven tell all the gems his plan for the future, hit the road, and find himself.
Scrumptious!
Through the return of Cookie Cat, he tells the gems he's moving out, and they all take it super well. Peridot, Lapis, and Bismuth are a bit more distraught, but Steven gives them some parting gifts to make it sting a little less. Even Jasper is a bit broken up that Steven's heading out, and so Steven figures something is up with the crystal gems to have them take the news so easily. He gives them parting gifts, but again, they act like all is pretty normal. Steven's already told his dad, but gives him the gift of finally settling down, and says that his old room belongs to him now. Finally, Steven hits the road, but then immediately turns back to ask why the gems are acting so strange, and they admit they've just been trying to act strong for him. They're devastated, but excited. And finally, Steven gets the send-off he knew his heart needed. Garnet assures him they'll all be a part of his future.
Later, brah!
And the credits start rolling. And that is the end of Steven Universe. Thank you so much for watching this incredibly long video. We'll see you next time.